Hi, this video will be to show using that lowest tier in version 6 on a rolling rail frame, okay? So I have Pro with gold, but I have access to that tier by tapping on Try Other Product Tiers and tapping Start. Whatever tier you have, the tiers beneath it you can open and use just by going in here and tapping on Start for that tier. So I'm going to tap on Start. And it takes me to this edge-to-edge page. So I'm going to tap there. And I could use my phone and watch videos, but we're going to skip all that. I'm just going to show you how I use it. And it tells you that you have a full video tutorial there. So I'm going to tap on Next. And it's telling me how I need to set my safe area. And it gives you some very clear instructions there. So I'm going to go up here and top left. Yeah, when I'm in the other tiers, I tend to set a big safe area, but you really don't have to do that when you're in this tier. So bottom right. And now it's telling me to choose a design. So I'm going to select a design. And I wanted to use a pattern that is in my other file, so I had to create a subfolder and copy it in. That's in a different video. You do have a lot of wonderful patterns to choose from here, but in my Creative Stitches, I have Sea of Stars, and that's the one I'm going to use. Okay, so now I've got my design, and it fills all across the screen. So I'm going to say Next. And I have to say, what height do I want this design to be? And there's no rules of what size to use. It's whatever you think works well with your fabric. I know it's easy to get caught up in this. One little tip is, and not every pattern will work with it. There are some patterns that you absolutely need to be 10 inches. So this little tip won't work with that. But I know that for me to get two rows before I have to advance, which takes the maximum use of my space, that if I will use 8 inches, then I'm going to say 8. Okay. And now I'm going to say Next. And so one unique thing about this tier, because I get asked, well, if you have Pro with gold, why in the world are you using that lowest tier? So this is one unique thing about this tier is that 8 inches I just set, it's going to stay that because now all I'm doing is changing the actual spacing there. If I were in one of the other tiers, if I were in Plus or Pro, I would be making my design bigger to nest into each other. But here, I don't have to do that. I'm going to tap on minus, and you can see the 2 rows are getting closer together, but the rows are actually staying 8 inches. How cool is that? Let's see. And I'm looking to see when can I not tell where the difference in the rows is. And at this point, it's really hard for me to tell one row from the other, so I think I like this. And you can always tap up there and see it bigger. You can move it around a little bit and then come back here to take away the magnification. And then you say Next. And then you choose where you're at with your quilt top. So that's what these icons are for. If you're up at the top, or you're doing the sides, or you're at the bottom. And this is a unique icon there for if you're doing say a table runner, something that fits between your rails and you don't have to advance the quilt any. And we're talking rolling rail here, of course. But like a placemat, even if you were on a hoop frame, probably a placemat, you're not going to have to do any kind of advancing. So that's what that one is for. Well, we're at the very top, so we're going to say set the top quilt edges. And one thing I want to point out is what you see in the white as we go from screen to screen. The white represents the stitching area, the pink represents the batting. So even though you may see stitch lines in the pink, they will not be stitching. Only ever what's in the white is what's going to stitch. So I'm going to use the raw edges of my quilt top, and I want to grab my stool, because one thing you never want to do when you're placing anything is lean on this top rail. Just even the slightest leaning can mess you up. So I don't want to be leaning, so I'm standing up here and I'm going to tap there. So I've let it know there's the top raw edge, and then I just bring this down and I don't have to go to any certain point, okay? I can be anywhere up or down that top left side. And then I need to place the top right corner. So we'll do that. And then come down here and place the side. So now I have told QCT exactly where the top corners are, and I'm looking at this and I see a little blip. So I want to do a little better job of placing that node, because I'd really like to see it straight across. I don't know if it's straight across now or not. Now I think I went too far. But it's okay, you know, to be picky with where you're placing it. Okay, I think that looks good now. And now we're going to say next. And now you get a real clear picture of what is going to stitch. So one thing that QCT does is it takes your pattern in that top row, and it's like it shifts it just a little to the left and a little above, because it wants to give you the nicest placement of the pattern. And if you're familiar with Power Panto, when it was first introduced, everything was cut off, you might say, around, or wrapped. The top row, the bottom row, the sides wrapped. So that's what this E2E tier is. It's wrapping things. This is the kind of a boxy pattern that would fit well between borders. So if you had a pattern that did a lot of like nesting, then it would be taking out the gaps, you might say. And so right now, even though you're seeing the white and what stitches, it's still kind of considering this the full pattern, so to speak. So that's why sometimes you may get yellow nodes. So right now, let's see if I did okay. I'm going to say move left. And I did okay. If I hadn't, it would have said, it would have let me know, and I would need to roll my quilt down a little further this way. It would have said I've got my quilt top too close to that rail. So I think that I'm okay now, and I'm going to say single stitch. Okay, and that's formed a placement spot. And these are important, because what if I got halfway across and there was a power outage? I would need these marks. So what I do is I move it just a little bit of distance away, and kind of pull, and then there's my bobbin thread. Well, I'm going to put a green dot right there, okay? So now I'm going to pull it away and come over here. If I didn't manually move it, then QCT would be moving it, and I'm faster than it is. So now I'm going to tap on move right. Okay, and I'm going to say single stitch. Okay, and again, I'm just going to move it a little bit of a way and pull that up, and I'm going to put a dot right there, okay? All right, and now I'm going to say next. Okay, before I go any further, there's a few things I want to show you. If you were in another tier, you would be thinking, well, where do I save it? So there is no save feature, but when you tap on info, this shows everything that I've just done. It tells me what design I picked. It tells me the height that I set it at. It tells me the spacing is minus 5/8 inches, and it lets me know what safe area I originally used. So you can take a picture of this or just make a little note and write it down. So if I can't finish this tonight, I can easily come in tomorrow and I'll have those little icons where it has me tell it where the edges of my quilt are, and then I just pick that pattern and set it for 8 inches with minus 5/8 inches spacing, and I'm ready to go without having a saved pattern to open, because it's just that easy. And then in settings, and I'm going to tap on that to collapse it. Okay, so now it's collapsed. And settings. So system settings, now that just tells everything that I'm using. A rolling rail frame with Elite frame and the 21X Elite. So we're going to say okay on that. And then in the other is the stitch settings. So that tells me how many stitches per inch do I want and how many tie-offs do I want for when I start and when I end. So this is actually what I want. And then the pull bobbin thread steps, when I'm in the other tiers, I don't like having that turned on, but I actually like it in here. So I leave that pull bobbin thread steps turned on. So I like all this, and I'm going to say okay. And just something I haven't talked about is on every page there is a help button, okay? And it gives you the on-screen information. If what's down here isn't enough, you need more information, then you're able to use this. And at this point, you don't have to be on the internet, because you never want the internet live when you're quilting. So if you wanted to see a video, I would say use your phone because you don't want to turn the internet on. And then you can play this and watch it, and it's showing you exactly what's happening with pulling your bobbin thread. So we're going to say stop. And you'll see there's a lighter gray and a darker gray. That means you can pull it down. And then if you see next, it means there's more pages. So this is really helpful. You can set it to be on so that it automatically pops up with every screen. But you start learning how to do things really fast, and it gets annoying. So at any point, you can turn it off. And now we're going to X out. So that's what that is. And now I'm going to go ahead and move my needle over here, okay? Because I want to go ahead and get it near where I'm going to pull the bobbin. So at this point, I will say singles. Wait. Hang on. I didn't do this. I was so busy talking about that. I'm like, I should have already pulled the bobbin. So I do want it near that green dot, and I'm going to say starting stitch. And it takes a stitch. So that's why I'm holding the end of that thread, is because I want a tight thread path. Not what I mean by tight, I don't want any slackness, because if you have slackness in your thread path, it's going to do a little bit of a nesty look starting out on the other side, and I don't want that, especially when I'm using a white thread on a blue backing. So that's the reason I'm holding that snug. I want it snug when it takes that first stitch. And now I can do this. I'm holding that thread with both fingers, and I'm just running it underneath, and then that pulls up that bobbin loop. And then there's the green that was on the thread. I bet some of you were thinking, what about that green you got on the thread? See, it's gonna be part of the thread tails, and it's not even gonna matter. And so now that I've done that, I'm gonna say next. And then when I tap on sew, it's gonna start stitching. So we'll be back when I get to the red and get ready to pull the bobbin at the end. Okay, the first row has finished stitching, and this is the screen you get. So we haven't pulled the bobbin yet, and you see the word continue. So you tap on that, and now it says single stitch. So I'm going to pull this away and then bring the needle back over and then tap single stitch, okay? Then I'm going to pull it away and cut it, okay? So now, let me throw that away. Let me grab a little pin here. I need to get the marks for the next row. So I'm going to leave my machine somewhere over here on the right edge, and I'm going to say next. And it's given me the spot that I'll need to place the next row, okay? So now I'm going to tap single stitch. I'm going to move my needle just a little bit away and put a green dot right there. And now before I tap next, I'm going to go ahead and move the machine over here because it's faster for me than to let QCT take over with the next screen. So I'm going to say next. Okay, and it went ahead and moved to where I need that spot. And I'm going to say single stitch. Okay. And now it releases, and I'm going to move it just a little bit away and mark that dot. Okay, and I have a confession of something I did, and that was when we were in the quilting screen, the reason I didn't go ahead and tap sew was I was taking a look at the screen because you see the grid lines when you're in the quilting screen, and I realized that, you know what? An 8-inch height is too small, and I actually changed it to be, I want to say 11. I wrote it down. I tapped on the info, and I made it be 11 inches, and then I changed the spacing, and it actually gave me new spots up there. So if you make a change, you're going to end up needing to do new placement spots up there at the top. So we'll collapse that. And another thing that we didn't talk about was what's in that red toolbox, okay? So you have these two choices. You have release carriage, okay? And what that means is if your machine is locked in place for whatever reason, maybe you hit stop because the bobbin ran out because you were mid-row and your machine is locked in place. So you can tap on that red toolbox and say release carriage, and it moves your machine around, okay? You can move it freely, but QCT is still in control. If you tap release sewing machine, it gives you that manual control. Like if your bobbin did run out and you just want to maybe do a few test stitches over to the side, then you have control. Your buttons work on your handles, and it's like QCT isn't on, you might say. So once you do your test stitches and you're happy and everything, then you tap on OK, and now QCT is back in control. So that's what's in that red toolbox. Okay, so now we'll say next. And because I changed it to be 11 inches, that means I don't have room to do 2 rows. So I'm forced to advance my fabric, and I just want to point out that if I were using Plus or Pro, you know what? I would be advancing my fabric. So, you know, you can say, well, in that lowest tier, you can only do 1 row, but there's a lot of times in Plus or Pro, you will only do 1 row, and this would be an example of one. So I'm going to move the fabric and reclamp down, and then we'll be back. This is just one little tip I want to throw in before I actually advance is I've been asked before, how do you know how far to advance? Well, there's my little dot, okay? That when this row ended, that's the dot I made. So I just take one of these little clips and put it right there. And then when I unlock this and start advancing, I'm probably going to go about right there and then lock this down. And now I'll finish clamping down and everything. And then we'll be back. I just wanted to show that little tip. Okay, I want to show basting the sides. I've already advanced everything. And one thing that I do, because I have the idler rail, is I'll take a marker and just mark where the edges are. So I have a mark there and a mark on the other side. So as I advance, I'm able to keep this feeding in the same spot. And then I have a ribbon across the front that I put marks on so I can keep the side aligned. And then I'm always looking to see, is my seam staying parallel with this top bar? So we're all good. So now to baste up the side, here's what I do. I'm going to go ahead and pull it all the way forward. And I'm going to tap on that red toolbox and say release sewing machine. And so I now have manual control. Well, it's showing 12, but I don't want that. So I'm going to bring it down to 4, okay? And if you don't have a glide foot, do your basting stitch as close to the edge as you can, or so that you don't, if it goes off a little bit, you don't have that happen, because you don't want that to happen. And so I'm going to pull the bobbin, okay, and pull that loop up, grab it and pull it out. And what I do is I take a couple of stitches forward and a couple of stitches back so it doesn't pull out. And then I use my hand and kind of keep it pulled out and straight. And then I stop when I get to where I had finished. So I'm stopped. And now I'm going to pull the bobbin, okay? And clip it. Okay. So now we've got the sides basted, and I say, okay. So now, because I advanced it, it's telling me that I have to do the icon for where I'm at, because it doesn't know if I'm at the sides or at the bottom yet. So I'm going to tap on the sides, and now I have to move my machine to where the sides are. And those gray nodes, I have to tap on that corresponds. So I'm going to tap pretty near that green. And you know what? I'm going to stand on my stool so I'm not leaning. So we'll start right there, and it'll move and change to green. And I could at this point, because I know that it's 11 inches, I could do this and say, well, I know roughly there. You don't have to do that. If you want to make sure you're placing it close to where that lower part of your row is going to be, that's your choice. Okay, and now there's my green dot, so I'll just kind of get near there and tap there and come down a ways and tap there. And these two, they don't have to be exactly apart from each other. These two you can place anywhere on the left side, anywhere on the right side, but you want to be paying attention to where you had your marks at and get kind of close to them, and then come down. And so one thing that I absolutely love about this tier is where you see this white. This is an exact match of what quilted above. So as you do each row, it's like you have that exact same starting. It looks the same from row to row, with just that easy, without having to use any other features but what's right here. So I do love that. And now we will tap next, because we've told it where the edges are. And each time you advance, you'll do that. And then once you do that, now you're going to use those spots that you marked when you finished that last row. So I'm going to, again, use my stool because I do not want to lean on the rail. And especially when you do a repair pattern, you never want to lean on the rail. And now I've got my needle right over that green dot, and I'm going to tap right there, okay? And now I just want to show something. If, I'm going to show you what would be bad. If I had advanced my quilt too far, and let's say the dot was way up here, then it gives me a warning, okay? And so, just... You'll get warnings if you advance it too far. That's why I like to use that little plastic clip so I don't advance it too far. Okay, so now we're back good. Yeah, one thing about this tier is it keeps you from doing anything wrong. All right, and now I'm going to tap there. So now I have placed this row to stitch. And like what I was talking about with how it places it exact, if I don't know, can you see that little star, how it cut off that edge right there? Okay, so now look, it's gonna stitch it perfectly in the exact same spot, just so easy without me having to do much. So I love that. Okay, so now we're gonna say next. And I want to move my needle near where I think that green dot is, which is toward the bottom. So now I'm going to say starting stitch, and I'm holding my thread nice and snug. And it lets me know the needle's going to move to that start and do a single stitch. So I've got my thread held snug. Now it's going to move and take that stitch. I'm going to run this thread under there to pull that bobbin thread out and say next, because that's where my sew screen is. And I want to just point something out. If you look really, really close, I hope that the camera can pick it up, you'll see grid lines. They're light gray, and each little tiny square represents 1 square inch. And that was why, as I started looking at it, before I started sewing that first row, I decided that 8 inches just isn't big enough, because I could count how many inches that big star was and how many inches that little star was. And then I held a ruler up on my fabric so that I could just look and imagine that stitching out for that number of inches. So that's what I used to figure that out. And also, I didn't discuss these things down here. So that single stitch is just for doing just that. If there's a reason that you want to take a single stitch, that's you can do that with that. And then you still have your red toolbox, and you actually have a move to start point, which would take it back to that green, and then the release carriage and release sewing machine, and then this repair pattern. I guess it would probably work right now. So you know what? Even though I've pulled this bobbin, I want to go ahead and show it to you. So I can go back and re-pull that. So don't panic. And what I can do is, if the bobbin had run out, or maybe the thread broke, or just some reason that you had to hit stop, because you'll see when you start stitching, it'll show stop that is available for you to hit if you need it to hit stop. And so it'll show these dark lines showing what you've already stitched, and part of those stitches probably won't be real stitches because it's where it's messed up. But anyway, you can take your needle and move it back, and like if obviously I don't have any stitch lines to go by, but what I like to do is move my machine farther to the left than where the stitching ended, okay? And I'll try to kind of follow the stitch path, and I'll say closest stitch, okay? So it's going to move the needle to the closest stitch. And then what I'll do, because you want to make sure you're lined back up to start stitching. So when, let's just say the bobbin did run out, you would pull out enough stitches to pull that bobbin thread up so that you could tie a knot. And then you can use a needle like this, a self-threading needle, where you pop the threads into the end and you can bury them into the sandwich. And you may or may not, depending on where it is, be able to do that. But you can just leave those kind of pulled out of the way. But get that done, and then you're going to need to get your needle where that stitching ended. But you want to make sure you're lined up, and again, just never lean on that top rail. But you can trace forward, okay? And then watch your needle. Watch your needle. And if you have something in your design that is a point or a sharp curve, look really close to how your needle is tracking along those existing stitches. And if it's lining up on them, then that's great. And if it's not, you'll need to do some nudging. But after you nudge, again, trace back and forward over points or some distinctive thing in your design that lets you know I really am lined back up. And then when you start getting close to where the stitching ended, that's when you can do your minus one to maybe go back. If you touch too quick, it'll say, hey, you touched too quick. But you can kind of just inch it forward to where you need to pull the to take that single stitch to pull the bobbin up, and then tap sew. So that's a great option. So now I've done this, and look, the machine is locked up, and I need it to let go because we're not really doing a repair pattern. I just wanted to show you how to use it. So I can go into my toolbox, and I can say move to start point, or I can say release carriage. So now my carriage is released, and I need to pull my bobbin again. So I can tap on that toolbox and say move to start point. And now it's gone right back to where that green dot is. And now I can take that single stitch and tap sew. So I just wanted to show you that. And after this, everything is just what I would call rinse and repeat. I'm going to stitch a row, and then I'll be over on that side, and it'll let me mark a spot. Okay, it'll have finished, and I've pulled the bobbin, and then I'll mark a spot over there, just like that spot up there. And then I'll manually move my machine over here before I tap next, so I don't have to wait for QCT to move it over here. And then I'll move it over here and kind of get near, and I'll mark my spot over here. And if I can only do one row, it'll tell me it's time to move the fabric, and I'll pick which icon it is, whether I'm still on the sides or at the bottom. And it's just a repetition of that. And because you're continually telling, each time you advance, you're continually telling QCT, here's where my sides are, because you're doing those icons to mark your raw edge. That's how it keeps stitching each row so perfect. So that's just yet another reason I love this tier. You don't have an opportunity to stagger rows, so it takes an edge-to-edge pattern that doesn't need to be staggered. So there's a limitation there, but other than that, it just gets very fast and very easy. It's just keeping you exactly where you need to be, and all the rows are just so perfect with each row. So we'll be back when I'm at the bottom. Okay, I've just finished the last row that I could do that's a full row. So now I'm ready to do a partial one along the bottom. And it had given me the message that it was time to advance my quilt. So now it gives me the choice of icons to choose. So now I'm going to be choosing the one that lets it know I'm at the bottom. So now I need to place these gray nodes. So I'll move that there and tap that one, and now I'm going to the corner, and you know what? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put a little dot so that I know I'm exactly over that lower corner. It's just easier with this glide foot. Okay, we'll tap there, and we'll come over here. I'm going to make my little dot here. All right, and we'll get the side edge here. Okay. And now down here at the bottom. Okay. So now I've told it exactly where my bottom edge is, and I tap next. And now it's asking me to set these gray placement nodes. That's the dot that I made after finishing the row that just stitched. So I've got my needle over that placement spot, and I'll tap that gray node. And then I'll come over here and place that. Okay, and now I say next. And just remember that it's only ever what you see in the white that stitches. So when you see stitching that's in the pink, don't worry, it's not going to stitch. So now you can see it is cut it off. So this is great. And I see that the beginning stitch is somewhere right here. So I'm going to move my needle kind of roughly in the area that green is. And I'm holding my thread because it's going to move and take that starting stitch. Okay, and I need to pull that bobbin loop up. So now I've pulled it out, and yeah. Now we'll say next, and I'm ready to hit sew. So when it gets to the red dot there, it will let me know that it's finished, and it gives me a chance if I want to go back and do something, but hopefully everything will go smooth with just this little bit. So just as a parting message, I love this tier. It's really good for when you will be stitching an edge to edge, that you're okay that this bottom row is partial, the top row is partial, and the ends are cut off, shall we say. So would you want to do this between borders? No, because you'll see that on the, well, yeah, you would see that kind of stitching next to the border if you ended it there. So you would not want to use this tier for between a border, but for just doing edge to edge, and also a pattern that you don't need every other row to stagger. You don't have a stagger option in this tier. So those patterns that every row just drops down directly beneath each other, it's fantastic. I hope you'll enjoy using it.